Could you explain the concept of demand forecasting?
Yeah, so basically in demand forecast, what we're looking to do is predict future consumer or customer demand. That's the big objective, right? If you could take one thing away from this in demand forecasting, is that you need to be able to predict future customer demand. And we do this by using several tools, right? In several ways and methods. And I don't want to get too technical, but just to give you like an idea, right? We use quantitative and qualitative data. The quantitative data is going to be the solid numbers that you were talking about.
Yeah, I'm focusing in.
So that side of things is the historical data, the sales data,
Okay.
the number side of things, right? Nice and well. We all love numbers if we do. And then you also have the qualitative side of things, right? What are some of the market trends? What are consumer trends that we're seeing? What are some of the experts in the field that you're functioning in or you're trying to sell your product in? So in a business in itself, our purpose of a business is to make money. And how do we make money? We sell things, right?
Yeah.
Or we provide a service, right? I always tell people, don't just think of supply chains as products. You can also have supply chains within service industries. So we want to sell as a business, we want to sell something. And in order to do that, we need to have enough demand and we need to have enough supply. Back to economics 101 and back to business 101, supply and demand. The supply is going to be you providing that product, you providing the good. But you need to understand who's going to look for that demand, who's going to look for that product. That's what we try to do in demand forecasting, demand planning. We try to foresee in our nice little crystal ball that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we break it and it shatters. But other times we try to forecast or foresee the future of what the consumer demand is going to look like. What does that consumer want to buy from us? Do they even want to buy from us? And there's so many different parts and elements that we need to understand in order to predict that as close as we can to the actual demand and without too many errors in that demand and in that plan. Why demand forecasting is so important? Because from that demand plan that we decide, from the sales, from the numbers, from what the market's telling us, that's going to flow into our supply plan. The supply plan is, what are we going to produce? What is going to be manufactured? What are our operations going to do once we tell them, hey, there's this demand for X, Y, and Z products. We need to build this many units, and we need to put that into a supply plan that's going to flow to the different people within our supply chain. So we start to see, right, how demand forecasting, demand planning is so important because it's going to build a foundation into what the rest of our operations and manufacturing and procurements, and production, and eventually procurement and production is going to need to achieve as well, right? A good example that I like to give students is the example of a vehicle or being in a vehicle. And I always tell the students, I drill this into their brains, right? The consumer is the driver of the supply chain. That's one of the things that you learn first thing in Introduction to Supply Chain and Supply Chain Management Principles. The consumer is the driver of the supply chain, and that goes back to demand forecasting as well. You have to think of yourself as a professional in supply chain, and all of us working in supply chain management are inside this one vehicle. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, there's this entity that's driving this vehicle. You have no control over this entity. You have no control over what they do. And they are the consumer. This consumer's behind the wheel, chugging along, blasting the music, driving that vehicle forward.
You make it sound so scary.
Because it is. But it is inside this vehicle that you, as a professional, all of us as professionals, all of us as companies, are chugging along, stuffed into it like a clown car in this vehicle. And that the consumer's the driver. And they're going to decide, okay, where are we going to stop? Where are we going to eat? Where are we going to rest? Where are we going to shop? What are we going to do? And we have no control over that vehicle and where that vehicle goes. The only thing we could do as supply chain professionals and in demand forecasting is predict where that consumer is going to go. And we do that based on, okay, in this particular route, where did they go before in the past? Where did they stop in the past? Where did they want to eat? What did they want to do? And we look at that. And we
Track their behaviors.
Track their behaviors, exactly. We track the behaviors because we want to see or predict what are they going to do next. Where is that vehicle heading, right? And we do that because we want to make sure that our supply chain is being reactive to the consumer. The consumer has the buying power, and without that buying power, you could have the best product in the world. But if that product is not being sold or bought by a consumer, then you don't have a business, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you don't have a business. I like to sell everything to everybody, but you can't. You need to think about your consumer, right? And that's a scenario that I give the students that I think they enjoy because, like you said, you see how chaotic it could be
Yeah.
and out of control you can feel if you're not the one behind the wheel making the decisions. you do make decisions, but you make them based on what this consumer is going to do. And you have maybe very limited control to what they do. What they decide to do is going to be determined by a number of factors: internal factors, external factors, right? Internal factors: where do they live? How much do they make? What is the demographics of this particular consumer and the market that they exist or live in? And then external factors. That could be everything from the economy, the government, the weather, COVID. That was something that affected consumer behaviors. I always tell that. Now, consumer behavior is completely different post-COVID. There's a consumer pre-COVID and a consumer post-COVID, right? That changed the behaviors of a consumer tremendously. And we have to understand that and see that, hey, how do we identify that? And how does that affect our consumer? These internal factors and these external factors are going to affect how that driver drives, right? So I love to use that as an example.
Yeah, that's a really good example. You can really visualize it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It gives you that vision of, oh my God, I'm not at the wheel.
No backseat driving.
No
there.
backseat driving. I can't tell it. I mean, you can always run promotions and do things that the consumer might.
Okay, so
be
I guess there's
enticed.
some
There's
backseat driving.
yeah,
Yeah, some marketing going
Yeah,
on
exactly.
there.
There's a little marketing that you can do and push the consumer, but you can't always decide for them, right? You're not going to pull their wallet out and say, here, you're going to buy from me. You can't do that.
We'd all have successful businesses if that
I
was
know,
an
right?
option.
I'm not trying to give anybody ideas. Don't rob people. So when I do corporate training, it's a little bit of a different level, right? It's people that have already worked in the industry. They know about their stuff. They have a particular structure in their setup in their company. So I tell them, you have to think of yourself as a detective. And we're sort of think of yourself as walking into maybe like a store, right? And the store is going to sell all these products. And you have to think of these products as looking at things that are missing. Why did this product go missing? Why did this product run off the shelf? What should be there in that space? And you put your detective hat on and you look for clues, and you look at finding things, and you look at certain things, right? Historical data, sales data, and you look at what are some of the consumer trends happening? What is happening out there in the market? Because as a detective, you need to figure out, okay, what am I going to bring back and put on those shelves? Demand forecasting helps you do that. It helps you figure out your detective job by being able to tell and figure out, why did the consumer commit the crime? What is the crime buying? Why did they decide to buy these items? And why did they move off the shelves, right? That is your purpose to do that, right? And in this demand forecasting true crime drama, the
intrigue, I love it.
Mystery, passion. You need to figure out, as a detective, figure out what happened. Like, who did it, who done it, what happened with what weapon, all of this. You need to figure this out, because all this information it's gold. It's what's going to help you make the next cycle, your next period of time that you're demand forecasting for, be more accurate if you look at these clues correctly.